Hi everyone and welcome along. I really hope that you enjoyed creating that little glazing chart with me the other day. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that my book, Botanical Watercolour Draw Your Way, my new reverse colouring book, something a little bit different from me, is available for pre-order. It's coming out in the autumn and it's going to be the best gift for the Christmas period or birthdays or anyone who just needs a little bit of a mindful moment. This is something that you're all going to need. We've had a look inside in the last tutorial on Tuesday, but I will give you another little sneak peek today. You can find the pre-order details in the episode notes below, and of course the free download page we've given you just so you can sample it before you try, because this is a whole new concept. Reverse colouring has been around for a while, but I don't know if on my channel it's something new to you. So head to the episode notes and you can find that. So today we are going to carry on with a little bit of technique. We're going back to basics this week. So on Tuesday we did a glazing chart, and today I'm going to just show you a lovely little painting of a clementine, and I'm going to show you how to paint it using glazing versus other sort of colour mixing techniques. So grab your paints and let's get started. So here I have two drawings of a clementine, and I'm going to paint one of them with my usual kind of wet on wet, getting the colours blending and bleeding on the page together, versus a glazed approach. So let me begin with my washes. So colours wise, obviously we want our oranges in play. So I've got some Cadmium Orange, Pyrrol Orange, some Cadmium Red, but then also I want some brown tones. So I've got Burnt Sienna, Raw Umber, and we also have some really like highlights, almost like unpainted shine. So I've just got a little bit of buff titanium there. I think I'm going to use my size 4 brush, and I will begin with, I'll begin with some Cadmium Orange, just sort of really relying on the wetness of the piece. I haven't sort of wetted the page before, but I'm wetting it as I go along. And this is going to be creating my highlight and leaving a tiny bit of unpainted space there as I start to build up the colour. I'm going to start to bring in some Pyrrol Orange. Oh, that's nice. So I suppose the big difference is the finish of these bleeded colours, these bled colours in together. But I know that for a lot of beginners, the pressures of time when you are painting a piece that needs to be constantly being blended together, when you're not sort of that confident with picking up new colours on the brush, and just, well, there's time pressures, doesn't there, with watercolour, and I think a lot of people get a bit anxious over how much water they should be putting on their brush, how much they should be waiting or not waiting. So this is very much sort of making the most of wet surfaces on the page. So I'm going to take some Cadmium Red and some yellow ochre, and I'm going to start just dropping that in there, just under the leaf a little bit, but you can see it's very much about all the new layers and colours bleeding into one another. And I'm getting a little bit of texture by making the most of the page, just drying slowly. So it'll be really interesting to see how this differs when we do it as a glaze instead. So I think my last layer will be getting a bit more burnt sienna and maybe even some moon glow. Really taking the colour off my brush and there we go. This is how I naturally like to paint, and I think it's because I'm quite an instinctive painter. I like to go quite fast. I love the satisfaction of the colours blending and bleeding into one another. Now of course we've got the leaves as well, so I will just do what I would normally do, get some nice light colour in there with some green gold and a little bit of unpainted space as well. Clean my brush off, just blend that in there. Okay, so there is my sort of regular watercolour wash blended clementine, and here we're going to do a glazed one. Now I think the reason some people maybe get a bit confused about glazing is because you can still sort of blend colours, because we need to do a base wash for this, but it's more about then that layer dries and we place another layer on top and we make the most of those sort of crisper layers. So I'm going to put in I've got buff titanium there, and I've got cadmium orange, and I'm going to be careful to begin with a nice light layer. It's funny because this is not a style I normally do, so I feel like a tiny bit nervous, but I know it'll be, at least if nothing else, a really useful exercise in learning something new. And I think even for this base layer, because that's the thing, it's not that you're not allowed to bleed in colours in your initial washes, it's just that when you've done that first wash, the next stage is all about layering another translucent layer on top of this one. Now it's fully dried. So the first layer is dry. It has to be 100% dry. So the next challenge is, what's the next layer going to be? So I'm already realising why I don't think I ever sort of fell into glazing much, because I'm such a sort of quick instinctive painter. I'm a lot less about the thoughtful slowness of it. But here we go. So glazing, your layers need to be transparent to go on top. Oh, but I do quite like it. There's something very sort of genteel about the glazing approach. And I've still got, you know, I've put 2 colours in there. You can still do it. It makes you think more about the real sort of light and shade of the piece and where the colours are coming from. So then another layer on the leaves. So I'm trying to find a sort of gradually more translucent colour, or just slightly deeper colour. So I've just added in some Sap Green. Yeah, I find this really interesting actually. I like it. Interestingly, I've found doing the leaves has really helped me sort of make sense of this, because they have slightly more obvious sections and things. But I'm going to keep going with my Satsuma, my clementine. I think it's because I've chosen a rather tricky topic with all the dimples, which is why I'm feeling a little bit like, oh God, what am I doing? But I think I just have to be patient. Oh my goodness, I have to be patient. That's a new thing for me. And it's really reminding me of an illustrator who I think is really brilliant, a girl called Holly Exley. She's got a YouTube channel actually, and I would really recommend you go and have a look at her work, because she is a real master of this technique. I think it's funny, I've always really liked her stuff, and I was like, what is it about it that is so lovely? I can't work it out, and I've realised it's this technique. She does glazing really well. But you know what? I'm enjoying it. Now, this layer is starting to make sense to me. So I hope that you appreciate the slightly perilous situations I put myself in on these tutorials when I go, I'm going to do a thing. I've never done it before and it's a new technique to me, but I'll do it in front of however many thousand people just so we can all learn together. So yeah, you're welcome. I think I'm going to go down to a slightly smaller brush to a size 0 for my leaves, and I'm getting a slightly deeper green in the form of just sap green on its own now. So now I can look a bit more closely. What I've got to be careful of is remembering that this is not just pure layering. Glazing is about being translucent. Yeah, I'm enjoying this, and I can see how more layers, just sort of slowly building it all up, just creates this really lovely kind of almost like a sort of a glassy feel to it, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if that does, but having these quite clearly defined sections. Well, I like it very much. Okay, so I'll mix in a bit of red with my orange, still making sure it's translucent, and we go again. So all the things I thought that were sort of downsides of glazing at the beginning, like going slow and waiting for things to dry, I can see why it's such a useful technique, especially for beginners, because it gives you a bit of time to sort of contemplate your next move and just allows watercolour to stick with you and not run off in a frenzied pace, which is what it can do. And what I'm also becoming aware of is you could just keep going, and it could be quite addictive to keep on just adding more and more layers to your piece. I mean, the key thing is you've got to keep them translucent to make sure you're not just layering. And I think that's one thing that I would naturally probably fall into. So if I sort of place in my last layers here, I've just got a bit of deep sap green. I really enjoy how it's just sort of creeping in on top of the other greens, but not completely getting rid of all the nice work we've done already. So one thing I've realised I do quite a lot when it comes to glazing already in my painting is by adding shadow, because I get a big bit of Paynes Grey and I come in and I slap it on top. So that's what I'm going to do for my last bit of glazing. Let's see how it goes. There's the leaf. And then we'll just do a little bit of it on the base there. And then on the leaves, so it's interesting, you need to sort of have a go at these things to realise whether actually it's not such a strange technique after all. Maybe you do already do it and you just weren't necessarily that aware of what you were doing. And that can be for so many things in painting, that you make these discoveries and happy accidents yourself by just following tutorials, or just having a go at things. But I've really enjoyed doing that, and interestingly, I suppose when I would have painted this, I probably would have then glazed on the watercolour wash of the shadow at the end instead, whereas I've just sort of left it as it was. So that was a really interesting exercise. I hope you enjoyed just seeing those subtle differences between the slow layering up of glazing versus just getting stuck in there with the watercolour washes. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. That's in the Watercolour for Beginners playlist, where there are plenty more techniques and tricks and tips which you can follow along with anytime you like. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!